You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
NIL. What is it and what can it do for your brand? We're going to talk about how you can create a marketing campaign using NIL, which is college athletes, and it's very affordable, and you'll find out there's a lot of tricks that you might want to take back. Welcome to Convenience Matters. Today, our guest is Shannon Carroll. She wrote the cover story for our October NACS magazine, which is the biggest issue we've ever had. It'll be at the NACS show, or is at the NACS show. And we want to talk a little bit about the whole idea of winning big with college athletes. So welcome, Shannon. Let's just start out by give us a lay of the land of NIL. I use the initials. For those of you that follow soccer, it doesn't mean nothing. It's an acronym, and it applies to college athletes.
It only means nil when Arsenal is playing and winning. But NIL stands for name, image, and likeness, and it really came about as a result of a Supreme Court case. There's been a lot kind of in the works for a while about college athletes getting paid. So the Supreme Court case, NCAA v. Alston, basically made that a reality in certain situations. So they're not getting paid by the school to come play at the university or the college. They're getting paid by brands. They can make money off, jerseys, rosters. They can make money for signing autographs, that kind of thing. So it's a way basically for college athletes to be getting something back from this behemoth of NCAA sports.
And of course, Arch Manning and some of these other big names you hear of, they're collecting more than a lot of pro athletes. However, there's also a lot of opportunities that lay below Bronny James, Arch Manning, and some of the others. And when you think about going back a ways, college athletes, maybe they could hope for a car dealership if they were successful in that hometown. But there's some opportunities. It's basically saying you can go shop yourself. And that's where convenience stores fit in, because they're in every community. And that means they're in communities where there's colleges. And of course, when you think about college kids, that is the core audience for convenience stores. They love convenience stores. So in your article, you kind of went through some of the examples. You talked about a couple companies. You talked about Weigel's and Casey's and Come and Go. And let's start with Weigel's, who's probably been the most active. And they're in Knoxville, Tennessee, which is right there with the University of Tennessee.
Yeah, no, I think as you kind of said, one of the things that was surprising to me is the fact that there are these smaller kind of niche deals to be made. You see all the headlines, and I come from a background in sports journalism. So that was kind of what was getting all the attention. But looking at how Weigel's had so much success, it was really finding local connections. In Tennessee, Weigel's realized that its biggest source of success was going to come from the university, the college. So they kind of partnered in a sense with Tennessee to find a local favorite, was really who they started with, Evan Russell, who grew up in Lexington, Tennessee. They partnered with him in April 22, I believe. He was a walk-on. It wasn't like he was this huge name, but they managed to find a brand campaign that really kind of combined his personality with the brand's personality in a way that felt really natural and created a lot of kind of from the ground up engagement, and have kind of built on that since, working now with other big name athletes, still staying true to kind of what Weigel's really wants to present itself and how it wants to represent its brand.
And for those of you not familiar with sports, walk-ons are the guys and women that are joining the team without the promise of a scholarship. They may eventually get one, and they tend to not get a whole lot of playing time, but they also tend to be the teammates that everybody loves, not just the team, because they almost become like partial coach. But when the walk-ons get in the game, people get super jazzed. And if they score, get a rebound, score, whatever they do, people love the story of the walk-on.
Yeah, if I'm using too much sports technology or terminology, just whack me over the head a little bit. My Saturdays and Sundays are usually spent watching college football or the NFL or soccer or some combination of all three.
No, that was more that the walk-on might actually be a better opportunity than the big star, because first off, more affordable. Secondly, probably more creative, because the walk-on had to go through some fight to make the team. So talk about a way that's a perfect way to build into something. And I think one of those was also Come and Go. There was a walk-on
Jordan Come.
that they happen to have the name Come. Yes. So it fits right into the branding.
Yeah. And again, I think with a lot of these smaller partnerships, or not smaller, but not the ones that are the $1 million for Nike or New Balance type thing, I think they're having a lot of success when you find things that feel natural, things that feel very just, it makes sense. So yes, you can play around with the name. There was one, I think in the article I talked about, a Michigan State guy named Darius Snow, who basically just reached out to a whole bunch of brands and wanted to create a Darius Snow cone and was able to do that. So name kind of works. You're also finding, people who really like a brand are reaching out. So there's this kind of very organic feel to things that are being very successful in situations such as these.
And another thing, when you get into marketing or PR, you always look at hooks. What are logical hooks? And when you partner with an athlete, the logical hook is game day after game day before game day. And so there's a lot of cadence where you can repeat messages. It's not a one and done. And I think that also can be attractive, not to mention that these athletes, as we talked about just briefly, they're the core customer convenience stores. They're the ones that are in there all the time.
Yeah, no, you talked kind of in marketing, and there's a lot of the terminology of, evergreen content. So it is stuff that can be recycled. It can be repurposed, that kind of thing. And yeah, I think, you see people who are tweeting that they would partner with a gas station for a tank of gas. So there's definitely a market there with these college athletes.
I'm so glad you raised that point, because there's 120 some thousand convenience stores that sell fuel. And when you think about some of the athletes that you have, they literally would work for gas. And it doesn't have to be creative. They can be the creative ones if you don't have creatives out there. And we talked about companies like Weigel's, Come and Go, Casey's. Call them what you will in terms of size. 70 stores. Some may say that's huge. Others may say it's small. But there can be clever ideas, whether you have one store, a couple dozen stores, or several hundred or thousand.
And that kind of goes to the message a lot of these people were telling me as I was reporting the story. It was that it's not as hard as you think it is. People think to get into this, you have to offer a whole bunch of money. But these deals are actually quite affordable. In terms of a company's marketing budget, this is a great deal. And yeah, you will find kids who will say, yeah, a couple of free tanks of gas, and sure, I'll take some photos for social media. It's this very underutilized market that a lot of C-stores can really tap into more than they're currently doing, if they're doing it at all.
Before we get into a couple ideas that you shared out there, now that everybody's interested in doing that, want to just kind of cover compliance, and then maybe how do you find how to get started. So let's start with compliance. Yeah. Obviously, you want to make sure that what you're doing is on the up and up, and there's certain rules you need to follow. How does somebody look at that, and then how might somebody get going in contacting
it was kind of funny. As I was reporting on the story, I think, there were 4 different proposed legislations and things getting changed. So even I was having to make sure I was up to date on all of the most current information. And I think Nick Triantaflo, I don't know if I said that right, and I really hope I did, but he had a great line that was, I better not screw this up or I could ruin this kid's future. And that's so crucial to think about is because the NCAA does not play games when it comes to compliance, you have to make sure you're playing by the book. So I think one of the great things that schools have started doing is they have NIL compliance officers, NIL departments, and they're really willing to work with brands and companies because it's in their best interest. If the kids who are playing for them are getting these NIL deals, it looks good for the school. Other students might want, or high school students might want to come. So I talked to someone at Michigan State who was basically saying they have this app they use called Influencer, and they have an NIL exchange. So brands can report deals. Everyone can kind of make sure things are above board. And the school wants to help, but you also have to work with the school and you have to make sure you're being active in approaching them. And it's not, a student reaches out to you and you sign the student and the school has no idea what's going on. They need to be kept abreast of these happenings to make sure everything's working as it should be.
And I imagine, like most apps, there's a whole bunch of vowels missing.
There
from the
are.
word influencer, if you're trying to look it up.
INFLCR. I can look it up.
Yeah, so just remove all the vowels and look for it in one of your favorite app stores.
We're in the 2020s. That's how everything is, right? You've got to make it more difficult to spell.
So that's how somebody can get started. Now, one of the other things is I think most people generally out of the box think of two sports. Think of men's basketball, men's football. There's an awful lot of sports out there, and there's an awful lot of opportunity, particularly with female athletes.
Absolutely.
And that's something you talked about in the article.
It's also something I'm passionate about because I'm a woman who grew up playing sports. I love watching sports. And I think if you look at the numbers, there's a lot of data that is saying women's sports are becoming much more popular in current consumption, media consumption. So you looked at last year's NCAA semifinals game between LSU and Iowa, and Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, and I'm pretty sure it was ESPN's most watched college basketball game all year, men or women. You're seeing the Women's World Cup, and even though the U.S. didn't go as far in it as it wanted to, massive viewership numbers. And so I think there's this really big market that people are realizing, oh my gosh, maybe we should get involved in that. We can get a piece of that market share. We can get those viewership numbers. And if you look at actually who is the most popular NIL athlete right now, it's a women's gymnast, Livy Dunn from LSU. And I think a lot of that is not only because, hey, there's this giant market that people really care about, it's also women are good advertisers. They're good at selling things. And that was something that people talked to me about, was how you can have the men and they look great on the billboards and the advertisements as well, but women are much better at turning social media engagement into brand loyalty, into purchases. So not only is it, hey, let's maybe pay attention to women, they make up more than 50% of the population, it's also they're more likely to buy what we're selling. And I think that actually goes back to something that Bridget Brennan, who will be speaking at the NACS show in October, talked to me about previously, was about how women are generally the purchasers. They make the decisions. And if you can combine, hey, women love sports, like me, I love sports. I'm the biggest girly girl you could possibly imagine, but I'm almost always got tennis or something on the background. And, or now you're seeing Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, the big crossover there. And Taylor Swift fans are buying Travis Kelce jerseys. So there's this giant area that if brands and companies can really tap into, they've got really loyal consumers.
And going back, since we're dropping names of NACS show speakers, talking about the most highly rated women's basketball tournament in history, what was the common hand phrase that they both used? John Cena's "You Can't See Me." So another link, John Cena being our closing speaker at the NACS show.
Look at all the sports connections here at NACS.
Oh, I know. And talking about women's sports, when a couple of years ago, we went on school tour, University of Georgia. And of course, they're kind of good in football.
Just a little
They
bit.
also have an arena. And on the tour, person asked, what do you think is the most popular event that we have at the arena? Men's basketball, throughout 3 other things. It's women's gymnastics. Absolutely packed to the gills. It's huge in the SEC. Women's volleyball.
Did you see Nebraska
huge.
recently? They recently set
90,000 people
to watch women's volleyball in the football stadium at Nebraska. It was more filled for a women's volleyball game than it was for a football game.
No, so there's huge opportunity there with women, and whatever the sport is. Doesn't have to be 90,000 people there. They tend to look at this overgeneralization, but they tend to look more socially on social media, whereas men may look at it more of a transaction. I did my job. I'm going to move on to the next thing. Again, generalization. You can find great opportunities with
women
everyone.
Women just are better. What can I say?
But looking men, women, the one thing you talked about, which totally fits our industry, you can make it fun. Whatever that athlete's known for, if it's a softball player or a baseball player, bring out a speed gun, and whatever. Can somebody match a certain pitch? Can somebody throw a ball through a?
Make it a competition.
There's so many opportunities.
I think you can have people say, okay, you think you can beat so and so in a one-on-one basketball game? Come out to whatever store on Friday, and here's your chance. And it really is this area that the people I talked to said, if you're in marketing, this is exactly the area you should want to be looking into, because it is fun. It is creative. You can play with off-the-cuff ideas. You're at the forefront of this landscape, so you kind of get to decide where you're going.
And the other thing is, it's affordable. It's you can test something for, say, $200 instead of launching a campaign that's several or tens of thousands of dollars. It's just a quick test, social media, all over the place, and it's a really nice fit.
And you also kind of talked earlier about how you don't have to look in the big sports. And so you can find engagement with the men's golf team. You can find engagement with the women's swimming team. I went to Cal, which has a mediocre at best football and basketball program right now, but kills it in the water sports, water polo, rowing, swimming. So if you're in California and you're looking at a connection, you're thinking, okay, maybe the football team's not going to do it, but hey, let's look at this swimmer who's probably going to the Olympics. Maybe we can get in on the ground floor and have an engagement, because I know this is something people who go to Cal or have gone to Cal know about.
And the other big thing, we talked about cadence with games. Athletes have numbers. And there's also a fun way you can tie that into promotions, where if some athlete has number 22, maybe something has a limited price point of something 22 or something like that. That also
someone
reinforces.
Hit 3 home runs, so it's buy 1 get 3 free, or vice versa, or whatever. So you can really play around with these statistics, and so and so had X many yards. Let's do something there. So there really is just this wealth of information and data and that you can play with. It's all at your fingertips, and it's really just waiting to be shaped into a fun form.
It reminds me, I went to grad school at Syracuse, and decent basketball team. There was a QSR restaurant that partnered with the school, where if the home team scored more than 90 points, everybody got free fries. Now, there's an asterisk attached to that. You had to buy a hamburger with it, but the score would get 82, 84, 86, and the "We want fries" chant would start up. And anybody who didn't know what that meant, it's like, what does that mean? Well, you go to this place. And it's
organic.
You can create that same type of thing with an athlete, where, let's just say, score a certain number of points or something like that, and something happens. Then you get some excitement in that stadium or that arena or wherever it's taking place, that all of a sudden your brand is being talked about during the middle of an event.
You see that even with, we're about to get baseball, postseason, and it's the steal a base, steal a taco, I think that Taco Bell does, or something. And
Yep.
so it's the kind of tie-in to something that it's not going to hurt a company's bottom line to give away a free taco to whoever remembers to come into the store on that day, but it's everywhere on commercials. It's something that's known. And so if you can kind of create that mark with your brand and tie yourself to something that your audience is going to remember, you've just succeeded big time.
And this is something that anybody
Absolutely.
can do. One store, you can give it a shot. To me, I think the big takeaway is it's a really affordable way to try some branding, and you'll probably find the college students, the athlete, may know as much about marketing as you do and may be able to be a partner in this.
Absolutely. If you look at, social media and how some of these athletes are able to kind of brand themselves and make a space for themselves in what's right now a very oversaturated market on social media, it's remarkable just to see the savvy a lot of these athletes have.
So get started. If you're not doing it, there's a lot of opportunity there. And I think it can be good for your brand, but hey, these kids, particularly the walk-ons and some of these others, it can kind of help them get through college. And the other thing is, some of these people are going to be successful athletes. Those are probably not affordable. Many of them will be successful in life, and you might find that by helping them out when they were looking for something, they will help you out when you're looking for something.
Absolutely. In sports, the goal is to never lose, and NIL deals, they're a win-win.
Well, thank you, Shannon. It is the cover story in the October issue of the NACS magazine, which you will find at the NACS show in your mailboxes, online, all over the place. It is our biggest NACS magazine issue ever. It's so big that on the cover, we have an overinflated football to represent how big the issue is. Now, of course, there's at least one quarterback that would hate this issue with the inflated football.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, Mr. Brady, I'm sorry. We're not going to send you an issue. I hope everybody else enjoys the issue. It's jam-packed. You actually have another article in there that's focusing on another interesting topic related to convenience stores. So give us a quick preview on that, and then we'll head out and we'll all take a look at the magazine.
The other story I wrote for that issue started because I was thinking what the song of the summer was going to be. So then I started listening in grocery stores and C-stores, anywhere I went, to what was playing on the radio. So then I said, okay, well, how actually do these songs get chosen? And that kind of sparked a little bit of a rabbit hole of how do these songs get chosen, finding out who is responsible for a lot of these playlists, how they pick the songs. There's not nearly enough K-pop on the playlist, but we're working on that. Maybe that'll happen in the next few years. But yeah.
Okay, well, when you land the interview with BTS for NACS magazine, we'll have you on again, or probably much sooner than that. So thank you, Shannon. And for anybody that's experimenting with NIL, shoot us a note. I'd love to hear more. Jeff Lenard, JLENARD at convenience.org, or any other ideas that you think we should be covering. We want to tell some good stories that anybody can execute upon, whether it's NIL or finding great music for your stores, or you pick the topic and you tell us. So thanks for joining us today,
Thanks
Shannon.
Thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed chatting with you.
Same here. And thank you all for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.